Rod and I have told stories about making moonshine in these mountains. We've told the story of the great Franklin County moonshine trials and all that entailed. We've also told you the story of Popcorn Sutton, one of the most famous moonshiners to come out of western North Carolina and East Tennessee. And the list of stories could go on and on and on.
And in telling these tales, there were a lot of times when we wished that we could have talked to some of these folks to get their story in their own words. And today, we have that chance.
Hello, folks. I'm Steve Gilley, along with Rod Mullins, and you're listening to Stories, a History of Appalachia. Now, Rod, a couple of weeks ago, I had a chance to actually talk to a moonshiner, a fellow by the name of Ira Jackson C, who's from the area of Bassett, Virginia. He's the author of a book called Moonshine, Mules, and Mayhem, and boy, he has quite a story to tell.
Been there to Bassett, lived in Henry County there for a short period of time, and went through Bassett. And, a lot of people still regard that as southwestern Virginia, and they regard that in the Appalachians. Mr. C talks about, more than anything else, what they had to do to survive back then, and that included moonshining and racing cars in Appalachia.
That is so true. Now, a relative of his turned us on to Mr. C, and we talked to him, and he had such a tremendous story, and he told it so well that Rod and I are just going to sit back and listen, just like you are, to Mr. C tell his own story. You are one fascinating person.
I've been here long enough to be a fascinating person.
Well, you're what, 90 years old now? So
yeah, I was 90 the 22nd.
And you probably put up 200 years of living in that 90 years, to be honest with you.
I would say so.
What I wanted to talk to you, though, mainly was about your moonshining.
Well, I don't know if I can tell you all you want to know, but I can tell you my experiences. That's all I know.
And you're from Bassett, Virginia, is that correct?
I was born and raised in Henry County, and Bassett is only about 4 miles down the road from where I was born. We sharecropped. We moved in 1938. My uncle from Chase City, Virginia, came up here and talked my mom into dad. He only had a farm around next to Chase City where he raised cotton, peanuts, and corn, and soybeans, and all that good stuff. And he talked us up and took my dad and mom into going down there. So we loaded all of our stuff, belongings, on this 2.5-ton truck and moved down there to an old house that wasn't fit to live in. And well, he didn't live up to his word, to tell you the truth. And we almost starved the whole year. We just had to make out just the best we could. And he didn't help us out a whole lot. He didn't pay my two brothers and my dad what he promised to pay to get them down there. Well, anyway, from there, my dad got fed up at 1938, the end of that, by December, and we moved to Maysville, North Carolina, next to Swansboro, and farmed there for 1940 and 41, raising tobacco and cucumbers and cotton and whatever you need people raised on a farm. After 1941, we moved to Pollocksville, North Carolina, and stayed there for a whole year, farming that was about 12 miles from Maysville, going towards New Bern, North Carolina. And we farmed there for 1 year, and we was aiming to stay longer. It was a nice farm right on the Flint River. And my grandfather, 2 days after Christmas, committed suicide with a shotgun.
Oh, my goodness.
The Marine Corps, the U.S. government, come in and bought our farm and another farm adjoining ours to make a training base for Marine pilots. And we had to move and be out of there by the first week in January. From there, we moved to New Bern, North Carolina, and my uncle rented a service station, a little place, a garage right out on the outskirts of New Bern, and I helped him, my mom and dad and the rest of our children move back to Virginia. And I just moved with them, stayed with them, and I helped him in the garage and learned a whole lot of stuff about mechanicking, which helped me out when I went in service. I was in the motor pool, and when I come out of the service, I've done a whole lot of work for myself and bought cars and worked on them, and when I got into racing business, it helped me out a whole lot of things from knowledge that I learned. And then, right after that, a little bit, sometime during this late summer, my uncle rented a Gulf service station, and I helped him in that. And there I met a young lady and fell in love with her, and later on he got me to come out and stay with him on a farm, and I slept in a garage above his adjoining yard, adjoining house. And we fell in love and all that stuff, and she got pregnant. Anyway, he had a fit and run me off, and so I come back to Bassett. I got restless and bored and decided to go to Norfolk and join the Merchant Marine. I was underweight. I didn't weigh but 150 pounds, and they wouldn't take step to nobody under 165, and it was Merchant Marine. So I come back to Bassett. I went back to work at Fieldcrest Mills and worked there for a while, and I got restless, so I joined the Army. I went to training in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, artillery training. From there, after I finished my training, I went to Italy, to Cortina. The war was just about over.
Now, I understand that you met an Italian girl over there too, didn't you?
I met an Italian girl. Her name was Rosie Ruggiero. I fell in love with her too. But she, I think she was pregnant. I know she was pregnant when I first met her. And me and Rosa fell in love, and then she had a baby, and she'd follow me around all over, and I'd send for her and find a place to live, and we just lived like man and wife over there. And then we went all the way to Cortina, Italy, where they had the ice Olympics over there later on. Anyway, from there I went to several different countries. They sent me back to the United States. I went to find my girlfriend, Angela, in New Bern, North Carolina, and she had fell in love with another person and got married. Broke my heart, and I come back to Bassett, Virginia, and went to work in DuPont, and making nylon over at the Martinsville plant.
Uh-huh.
I met a girl over there, my wife, my love of my life, afterwards, all my children was born with. I met her, and we fell in love and was aiming to get married. Her name was Betty Young. She had come from a Moonshiner family also. I think she had 16 brothers and sisters beside her. Anyway, we fell in love, and I was aiming to get married in 11 days. That's when my vacation was starting. And I got in a fight with a co-worker, and we both got fired. And I didn't know what to do. Bootlegging and moonshining was going great at that time, and I decided I'd do that. Me and my brothers. So I had 5 brothers beside myself, and we all started in the one who was old enough to start in the moonshine business, and we made out pretty good there. We were making a little money, and we was making more money in a week than you can make in a month in a furniture factory or at DuPont. With my brother, Stacy, and my brother, James Irvin C. Jr., and 2 of my brothers was in service, had to come home from the Army, and was married, and we had some business with them, too. I had a first cousin that lived next to me. His name was Maury Miles, and a little bit older than me. He was well-versed in the moonshine business and knew the ropes. So we got in with him, and we done pretty good at that. We set up a still on the back of the sea farm. My granddaddy had a big farm out there. We mashed in and made the first run, and I was helping him on a cow shed a little bit ways, about a mile or so from there, where he had some cattle. And we seen a car pass on the old gravel road. 4 or 5 men was in that car, and they stopped about 100 yards from us down there. And one of the guys got out, walked up the creek, and he said, "I bet you got a report on our steel. We better go see about it or something. So he carried me up the road, and I jumped off the car and went down and got in the bushes above the steel, so I was hid. And the first thing I know, I seen him come down the path towards our steel place. He stopped and hesitated a little bit. He was one of the revenue officers, and he walked down and raised the cover on one of the boxes, fermenting boxes, and stuck his finger in there and tasted of it, or smelled of it, and they was pretty well knowledgeable about it. And I guess we were supposed to work that night. And so when he left, I left too, and I run to my cousin's house, which is a half a mile up the road, told him about it, and he says, well, I guess me and you and your brother Stacy will just go down there and cut it up and just reserve out of it and save it, the cap and worm and some of the material. And so that's what we did. They found out it was cut up and everything. They got mad and wanted to know, and they asked all kind of kinfolks and neighbors and what if they knew who done it. Nobody would tell them anything, because at that time and place, this whole country and this part of the country was during the Depression and all. That was the only way of life they had. So we was pretty tight-knitted about it, and nobody would tell on you much about it. Just play dumb or something like that. After that, they watched us pretty close. They knew about whose it was, because whoever reported it probably told them. And anyway, we went from there and done a whole lot of putting up places, different places. Some of them we didn't have too much luck at, and then again we had right much luck at.
There was another incident that I'd like you to tell me a little bit about. Had to do with a revenuer catching you, and you ran off, moved a truck, and I think it was a truck, and then you ran home and changed clothes and went out and pretended like you were working on some concrete.
Well, you want me to tell you the whole story?
Sure, please.
All right. So me, my brother, and another good friend of ours put up a steam place. Now, me and my brother didn't know nothing about operating a steam boiler. So he did, and he had pulled time a couple times, and his name was Big Boy Queen. I ain't going to tell you his whole name, but that's good enough. Everybody knows it by Big Boy. Great big guy, super guy. So we put up a steam outfit. And I don't know if you know anything about steel boxes, but a steel box made out of pine, white pine, 4 foot square, 30 inches high, would hold 280 gallons of mash. So we put in a steam outfit with a big hogshead that holds 3 of those boxes at one time in the city. And we had 24 of them, 24 boxes. And we made one run, and we was using coke to fire the boiler. We made one run and put in 48 bags of sugar for the second run. And I don't know if somebody reported just too much activity going on, but we thought the law had been looking for it. So we laid off a few days, and nothing happened. They deserted me because I was slim and trim and I could run fast, and to go over there and we had one old Army weapons carriers over there that we used to haul stuff in and out with, coke and sugar and mash and haul the stuff out with, whiskey that we made. And we was capable of making 800 gallons a week out of that steel. When I went over there, I loaded up. It was nearly dark when I went over there. It was about a half a mile behind my brother's house. Anyway, I loaded the old truck up with the cap and worm and some malt and sugar and stuff and all I could get on there. And I started back up the old road through the woods, and I seen this guy coming down the path, the roadway. He had an old Army blanket draped over his shoulders, where he was going to lay around and wait for us to come in, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And so I jumped out of the truck after I started up the road, and he hollered at me and told me, "Hey, hold it just a minute. I want to talk to you." Well, he sounded like a northerner or something, with the accent. And I knew it was nobody that I knew, the way he talked and the way he acted. So I run down by the outfit, the steel place, and I got way down below it, and I didn't see nobody. And all at once, a guy jumped out from behind a great big old tree, grabbed my left arm, and I swirled around naturally, and he held on to my sleeve, and I had on loafers, just old bass Norwegian loafers. And if I had on tennis shoes, I might have done a whole lot better. But anyway, he jerked my sleeve off my arm, and I got away. But meantime, I lost my left shoe there, my left Norwegian, and I didn't even know. I was scared and excited and all that stuff, and I didn't even know hardly that I had lost my shoe until I got way on the way from him. I made it back to my house. I had to put a new house, and I poured sidewalks and stuff, and had some forms on them and stuff. And here they come. I changed clothes. I put on some coveralls and kind of got some of that stuff scent off of me. And here they come, two of them. One of them was Freddie Merle. He was one of the chiefs, and the guy that grabbed my sleeve. And he asked the guy when he sitting in the car. I said, when he called me over to the car, I was breaking the loose forms from the sidewalk and busy as I could be. He asked the guy. He said, "Is this the guy that you saw over there, or jerked his sleeve off of us, tried to capture?" He looked at me and he shook his head, and he said, "I can't swear it was him. I don't know. It's almost dark." So that made me feel so good. I thought she was going to arrest me right there. My dad lived just a little ways up the road from where I lived, and was almost close to the road that we turned in to go to the steel place. And the next morning, he had a little front porch with a cement stoop on it. That shoe and that shirt sleeve was tucked in my shoe, was sitting on his front porch. And he knew it was one of the C boys, one of us 6 boys.
Uh-huh.
But they never did come to arrest me, and that was another time I was lucky. So, yeah, like you say, I was one of the luckiest bootleggers there was, because I escaped several times when they run me like that.
Well, were you ever caught and arrested at any time?
Yeah, I was. But I was never caught at a steel place. I was caught hauling whiskey one time. They blocked the road on me.
Uh-huh.
And I was trying to stop, and I couldn't stop in time because it was on a gravel road. I almost stopped, but I slid into them and bumped them up pretty good, and I jumped out and run. And they had several people there, and they run me down. And, well, I run and got away, but I give out, and I was under a great big old white pine tree, and they sent some of the local people that was digging a well close by where I hit that car, and they sent some of them over to try to, surround me, I guess. I don't know. They deputized them or something. And one of the guys come up and saw me laying under that tree, and he hollered and say, "Yeah, he is under the tree up here. Y'all come up here on the hill." Well, I had done run and got away, and I was kind of out of breath. And I asked him, I said, "What the heck is it to you if they let me go?" He didn't say nothing. He squalled again and said, "Here he is." And I picked up a great big old rock. I don't know what I'd have done if he hadn't run, but it was one that I couldn't throw. So I went to watch him, and he'd run down there squalling like he dickens. And first thing you know, I walked up towards the road, and there they got me. They had them all over the place. I put the handcuffs on them and squeezed them down as tight as I could, cut the blood circulation off to my hands. But I didn't complain. I didn't say nothing.
Okay.
So when they was taking me over to jail, they was asking me some questions. I sat back in the back seat, and I didn't say nothing. I mean, I didn't even answer them. I didn't even tell them who I was. But anyway, one of them turned around and asked me, said, "You think you're a smart son of a bitch, don't you?" I still didn't say nothing. They took me to jail, and I got 6 months over there.
Well, now, you were doing all this back in the 50s. Can you say what the difference is between then and now? I guess mainly in terms of the quality of the moonshine, if you're aware of that.
You got that right. Nowadays, it ain't as much moonshine made as it was in them days, because everything was going good and the war was over and people thing was booming and people was making money, and they could spend money for moonshine, and we was hauling that stuff to Richmond and Winston-Salem and Greensboro and some places in West Virginia, and there was a big demand for it. And now people make what they call black pot. I never have made none in my life, and I wouldn't, because it's not fit to drink. It's just shortcuts, you know.
Well, what is black pot? Because I'm not that familiar with the different kinds of moonshine.
Well, we made what they call box liquor. Like I told you, we made 4-foot boxes and mashed in them, 200 pounds of meal, which was 4 bushels of meal, and then mashed it and put boiling water in it, mashed it up with mash forks we had, and got it a good consistency, and cooled it off a little bit, and put some malt and rye in it, and yeast, and it would work off and make corn liquor. That's pure corn liquor. No sugar. And now they put bran in there, just pure bran, cornmeal bran. And then they put sugar in it and water. And that's all they do, and let it work off.
Yeah, I understand that you sold a lot of liquor to some very prominent people. And I'm not going to ask you to name names, and you wouldn't tell them anyway, but was that the case?
Oh, yes, sir. And the prominent people would not buy a lot. But they wanted drinking whiskey, like they made brandy.
Right.
Brandy is one of the hardest things in the world to make, because it takes so long for it to work off and ferment. And it takes about 6 or 7 weeks for it to ferment to make, to get it right. And then it's a different process for making moonshine whiskey. It's a whole lot different. And it don't just turn out so good. So it sells for a whole lot. We used to sell it for. I sold 100 cases to one guy one time for $20 a case. 6 gallons in a case.
Wow.
$20, and still made money on it. The moonshine cars that we fixed up in them days was expensive, because we had the great big. We get racing motors to go in them, and there was a guy that lived up near us. Was in the racing business. His name, I know it won't hurt them, but he's dead and gone now. His name was William Mason. Had 2 race cars, number 45 and 45A, and he won races all from Florida to New York and Massachusetts and everywhere. And he fixed motors for us, and he lived about 2 miles from us. And I drove a race car for him once or twice. Have you ever heard of Dale Earnhardt?
Yes, I have.
Well, listen, there's a picture in there of his daddy that I drove a race car for once.
You drove a race car for Dale Earnhardt's daddy?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, me and my brothers had some race cars, what we call modifieds. They was old model 37 Fords, with dolphin houses in them, and stripped down and to make them go fast, and had racing tires and racing equipment on them. That was the way the racing started. NASCAR really started like that. So we went down, and me and my brother took our car down there to race at Burlington, North Carolina. And Dale's daddy was named Ralph Earnhardt. He had a car there, and he had broken his leg in an accident or a car wreck or racing wreck or something. And we parked right beside him, and when I went out there and practiced, I tore the rear end out of my car. It come out. And so we went back up there and parked it right beside him, and we was going to just watch a race and just pull our car back to Virginia. Well, his driver, he had to drive his car, was a NASCAR driver. He's supposed to showed up to drive it, and for some reason, I don't know why, he didn't show up. And the last minute, he asked me, he says, well, my driver ain't showed up, and you done tore your car up. He says, you just well take mine and go out there and race it. Well, I went out there and practiced 2 or 3 laps. It was race was about to start, and so I didn't have time to get used to driving it. So, but he told me, he says, you ain't putting it in there fast enough. He said, put it in there hard as you can and give it all you got. But I come in fourth with it. I think Perk Brown win the race, and Ned Jarrett come in second. And I forgot who was Bobby Allison come in third maybe, and I come in fourth. And I thought I'd done good with it, but I could have done better if I'd have really been used to the car and wanted to take a chance, but I didn't want to wreck his car. But anyway, he come in, he complimented on driving a good race and everything.
Well, Mr. C, I appreciate it. You tell some great stories. As I said at the beginning, you've got 200 years of living in your 90 years of life, and that is certainly the truth. And I know you've got your book out. I've read that book and want to let everybody know that you need to check it out. These stories and more are in this book. It's called Moonshine, Mules, and Mayhem by Ira Jackson C. I got my copy at Amazon. You can get yours there as well and enjoy some good reading. Not only that, Mr. C's got another book, actually one that came out before this one. It was called If It Was Meant to Be, and I'm looking forward to getting that one as well.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Well, listen, I want you to read that first book. I think it was better than the first. It ain't as much moonshine in there, about making moonshine in there, but it's a recipe in that one.
Aha, there you go.
Well, you can order it from the same place.
All right, very good.
Wow, Steve, a lot of history there, and 90 years old, and all of this in so much detail, like he remembers it from yesterday. It's just incredible to hear this story coming from this man, and he digs down deep into, not only just the moonshining thing, World War II, but having to leave, being, being a sharecropper almost there for a time, the Depression, romance about, being jilted and different things like that. I mean, very detailed. It's almost as if he had opened up a book and he was reading it, but still it's in his own words of what happened to him.
It is. It is a quite fascinating story, and it's the story of Ira Jackson C, as told by Mr. C himself, another story that makes up the history of this place we call home, Appalachia. Thanks for listening. You can subscribe to stories at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, FeedBurner, or on your favorite podcast app. For more stories, just follow us on Facebook at Stories of Appalachia and on Twitter at Story Appalachia. Till next time, take care. We'll see you then. So long, everybody.